Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Last week, I believe we talked about what's the most important thing. And so maybe you've taken the question to heart and you've entertained some other questions that might arise this week via such question. So I thought that we would engage tonight in some questions, and so we'll. So I think in introductions you have spoken to some people about mind, that practice is just mind, and we also speak about mind is the way. What is this mind and what is the way?
I think that's the difficulty in telling someone that everything is mind, because that can be such an idea. But mind is just what we are sitting in. It is our experience. It is everything. There's nothing that isn't mind, which is so little to do with our words for it. I mean, our mind extends as far beyond what we can imagine. It is what we can imagine. It is the past, it is the future. There's nothing that is not it. I think allowing this, opening to it, this is to practice the way. My question to you, as I sit and I try to understand what this mind is, I have the sense that it is dynamic. But at the same time, I know that I am just my experience. So when we sit zazen, how important is it really to understand the dynamic of our mind? Or are we just opening to the experience? How much understanding do we need?
My understanding is that zazen is to open to experience, that zazen is complete experience. And there are times when we see through and we see through what mind is, and sometimes we simply experience. So we do both at different times, and the direct experience in zazen is sometimes the full understanding of mind, and sometimes it's just what it is. So there's no absolute about that, or there's no saying it's that way or this way. Zazen is just zazen at this time, at this Dharma moment, Dharma position, and then zazen is this Dharma position, and then this Dharma position. And so we can't enter zazen thinking that it should be that way or that it will be that way. We just sit.
I'm eager to ask another question.
No. It's my turn. You get it in a moment. So, we chanted in the Heart Sutra tonight all of these qualities, and then all of these things are this, and then they're not, and they're this, and they're not. And when we chant mind consciousness, what is that? Do you want me to give you some other words that preceded it?
No.
Okay.
Because the
The
spirit...
realm of mind consciousness. What is that?
Because the spirit of these things are that awakening is beyond anything that we could confine it within. It is boundless. I think what this suggests is that it is even beyond what we would imagine consciousness is.
It says no realm of mind consciousness, so it's suggesting that there is no such thing as a contained realm. Is that what it is saying? Is that what you are saying? It is saying?
That we could objectify.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that when we ask what mind is, and we go to put words to it, it seems fair to say that that mind idea might be consciousness itself. But that's always the difficulty, is that with that idea it might become arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is why we chant the Heart Sutra all the time, because it's so easy to fall into that.
Yes.
I remember you suggested once that we might try placing our awareness just outside of ourselves. So we have the experience of opening up, that our conscious awareness isn't just inside of us, but it extends far beyond that. And I wonder what sensory experience that is.
Just presence, just being with all that is around, so that I am not sitting in my emotional body, but I'm sitting with Sangha, I'm sitting with all of existence. Then when my consciousness in Zazen, or with Zazen, or given by Zazen, is not inside my emotional frame. It's here. I mean, not just here, but it's everywhere. So presence is, in essence, placed, not me sitting here thinking, but it is also a way to do non-thinking. That when you presence yourself, there's not thinking just falls away. And we become aware of everyone with whom we are sitting, and that opens the heart very wide. And it is also, as Dogen Zenji says, that the myriad things come forward, but we sit waiting for the myriad things to come forward. So we sit here or out here in allowance of that, or with everything that does come forward. So I can't say that it is a sensory situation. It's almost non-sensory, except that one is fully aware of everything at the same time.
Is that what Samadhi is?
That's a good way to say it. That one is if one is in Samadhi, one is with everything entirely.
Is there a way of experiencing samadhi that's more sensory?
Well, I suppose if you are doing a painting, and you are, completely with it, and you are, smelling the paint and painting and moving and so forth and so on, that is a kind of a form of samadhi, of deep, well, maybe that's a form of deep concentration, but it is also a form of samadhi, of being beyond our usual brainwave state.
So, but could you say that samadhi is that it sort of diffused, expansive state?
Yes, I could say that. Yeah.
And whether you have content of sensory experience within that is...
I don't think there is any.
It's just part of that diffusion?
You're just present to everything, and there's no personal sense of sensory in that. In a state of samadhi, one also does not necessarily have body awareness. I mean, one is sort of not floating. One is, on the cushion, but there's no sense of body. So there's just not a sensory question, to me, at least in samadhi. Okay, there was a lot of questions. So now I have another question for you. Obviously, friends, this was planned, but we did not plan any questions whatsoever. But we planned that we would do this tonight. So, Dogen Zenji says that the active Buddha goes about everyday doings. Nothing unusual, just the active Buddha goes about daily life. What do you say to that?
What else could you do?
Expand a bit on that. What is this daily life, and what is the active Buddha engaged in?
Well, I think in accordance with Dogen Zenji's teachings, as best I understand them, this is what we are always doing. It's this Buddha mind. Whether we practice and realize this is the variable. But we cannot do anything but this awakened state. There's nothing else. I mean, that's the nature of being human, of being anything, of being alive, of being experienced.
I think I should get all the questions, don't you think? Because these are very good answers.
I really tried... maybe this wouldn't be... I'm very interested in where questions come from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's such an intimate thing to find the question. And my sense is that as Zen students, we should always be sort of looking for them in our life.
Mm-hmm. So the question is the more difficult part. The answer is done. If you get the question, you've got the answer. The question is extremely difficult. But if you examine your own question, the answer is right behind it. It's right there.
How would you... how would you advise a student to best find the question?
Well, I like what I gave last week, to have this general question, what is the most important thing? You know, if you're going to answer such a question, you have maybe 100 different questions you have to ask to arrive at what is the most important thing. And all of those have to be investigated to some degree. If you say, what is the most important thing? And I think I said, is the most important thing to sit zazen? That needs to be examined, doesn't it? So this one very large question, huge overriding question, what's the most important thing, should drive into us in a certain way so that we don't go about our lives frivolously. We keep asking, what's the most important thing? Is it most important for me to come to Zazen tonight, to sit together with Sangha? Is that the most important thing? What's the most important thing? Is the most important thing for me to study the sutras, to whatever it is? That goes on and on and on, and obviously has no end to it. And yet one is at the same time examining one's life in relationship to practice when we say, what is the most important thing? It's the most important thing for me to follow the precepts. It's the most important thing for me to engage in a particular task in my own personal life. Is it the most important thing for me to follow my breath when I'm sitting zazen? It's endless, the questions that come around with that one question. So that is one way that I suggested we engage. That came last week. And so trying to encourage people that we can get really dry in our practice and we can get kind of worn out a bit sometimes and maybe even disinterested. And so to reawaken our engagement with our spiritual life, we take up something like that, that just sort of motivates you to ask whether we are really addressing our lives in a wholehearted way. Are we really fulfilling something that we felt we wanted to do? And so, what's the most important thing?
I almost want to say that the most important thing is to engage one's life enough to have a question.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But you asked what's the most important thing to get that. Indeed. But sometimes we get a little dry in life. We're a little bit older, and we sort of have gone along, and things have worked out okay, and we haven't had to push too hard, and things have come fairly easily to us, or we just kind of going along. And so it's a way to refresh ourselves, a way to refresh the mind and engage with, as you say, to engage with life in a deeper way, and to see if there's any leftover homework that we haven't done yet.
This leads me to another question. May I ask?
Maybe you can answer it yourself. Anyway, what's the question?
No, I had the sense, when I sit zazen, it's like I'm engaging it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which seems to be different than just accepting it.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, at what point do we let go? Or do we?
Yeah, of course you let go. So, are you saying that when you engage zazen, you are inviting zazen? Or are you stepping into Zazen? Or Zazen stepping into you?
As someone, I do both.
Okay.
But I also have this sense that I want it to be more. I want it to be richer. I want to experience Kensho.
Sure. So Dogen also says that we should practice to become Buddha. And so if we have that aspiration, which most people have at some point when they come to practice, that there's at least an engagement with the Buddha in some way, or a notion of what the Buddha might be. And so the aspiration to become Buddha, I think, will take you through those journeys of engaging Zazen, or sometimes waiting for Zazen, or rushing toward it. I think that to become Buddha is to invite all of those possibilities in Zazen. Because that aspiration, we just can't deny that. So if we just sit back and we don't do anything, then we feel that we're not fulfilling the aspiration. So we do that until we do something else. I mean, I was interested in Shohaku Okamura Sensei's, Roshi's talk in the book that we just finished. And he says, when I sit Zazen, he said, I don't do anything unusual. I just be present. I'm just there. And I think that comes after a lot of years of Zazen. And I think that as a young person, I began practice the same age as you. And I was so hungry to be Buddha. I just, I will sit here, hair on fire. I will not leave this cushion until Buddha appears. And it went like that for me a long time, until I burned through. And so I think that all of those are appropriate. I don't think there's any one way to sit or one way to face the wall. I think that whatever, as we sit, I mean, as we are, we come as we are, and that impetus to engage Buddhism is how you are. So you can't be other than how you are. So I don't know that it needs to be questioned entirely. I think that that's you. So you do that for as long as you do that. And someday you will become Buddha in a different way. Yes, Bob.
Edo-san, how do expectations, I mean, people often, I'll speak for myself, I have brought expectations to Zazen.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to get something, I'm going to get this or that. And at that point, I have some goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe this is a twofold. How is that different from what you're talking about? Aspiration?
Yeah, I don't think terribly different.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the aspiration to be Buddha. So you say, I mean, I think it's totally normal and natural
Mm-hmm.
to say that the Buddha awakened, why can't I?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but don't remind yourself that Dogen Zenji says that all of practice is awakening itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you already are, and you're already doing it, but it has to be realized. You have to really realize that.
And that's the burning through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's, where you shouldn't have aspiration, or you think there's no goal. Of course there's a goal to be awakened. I mean, I don't see it any other way myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that goal becomes arrogant, or it becomes an egotistical kind of aspiration, then it's a problem. But the aspiration to be Buddha is the finest spiritual dynamic that you could engage in. So, what's the problem with it?
Okay. I mean, I've read, to have some gaining idea
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
an appropriate way to approach Zazen.
Well, I mean, Zazen's always there.
Mm-hmm.
So the question of engaging it, Will may have a very different meaning about engaging, but we purposefully come into the Zendo, face the wall, and say, bell rings, now Zazen.
Mm-hmm.
So we are engaging. We are engaging Zazen,
Mm-hmm.
but I also feel that we invite Zazen. We invite Zazen to be. And we don't have to do a lot more than that. But we do have to stay awake. We do have to pay attention. We do have to, as I say, place our awareness beyond the interior ruminations and anxieties and all that goes on the inside. If we are in that state, then we bring Zazen to those conditions, not bringing those conditions into Zazen.
Mm-hmm. So we're opening
Yes.
to Zazen. We're not.
Yes.
Okay.
Always, always. That's
Mhm.
it. We open to all of existence.
Mm. Okay.
I mean, how better does it get?
Mm.
I think we're good. Huh? Thank you. That was fun.